All right. Well, we'll get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Ghost Comms podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, video version here on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Jatmon, joined by my co-host, Vishal, yet again. And today we have a professional caster and analyst, content creator, and a pillar of the competitive Fortnite community. Irreplaceable. You probably already know who he is if you know anything about competitive. We have Reisshub blessing us with our presence here today. Dude, thank you for joining us.
Firstly, thank you for having me. And secondly, thank you for the nicest introduction I think I've ever had. I mean, dude, at least 4 compliments in one sentence, which that's going to be a world record in my world.
If I listed out my top 5 most wanted guests, you would definitely be in the top 5.
Let's go.
Aussie, Jarian, Colazzo, which I think a lot of people would find underrated. I think he's just a great conversationalist, you know. I don't know who number 5 would be, but yeah, I was unbelievably excited when we got this. So
it's me for a second time. I see how it is.
yeah, exactly.
Of course. No, thank you. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah. So firstly, just kind of get into your gaming background, how that played into your life, and then how we got to Fortnite from that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like I've always been interested in games. Since I can remember, my memory's horrific for anything that happened yesterday, the day before, but I still remember playing Pokemon Red in 1995 or 6, wherever hell the date it came out. I am 30, so I have games that have dated me here. But the first ever game I played was Pokemon Red, and I was basically I remember just being hooked to it. I mean, I don't have it on the table, but I still am playing Pokemon to this day.
Nice.
And essentially, at that point, I got into it with that, got all the other consoles, Nintendo 64 at the time, going to the PlayStation. Basically went through almost every single iteration of console you could think of along the times. And I actually was never like a PC gamer at all. And when I became a big boy and got a big boy job, ended up kind of not playing as much video games at all, because you got job, you got responsibilities, and all the snoozy boring stuff that you don't really want to do.
Yeah.
But on the side, I was still playing like old school RuneScape. That was still my jam. And I remember I loaded onto my Xbox to think what I was to play Netflix or to watch Netflix at some point, because I just had a connected TV and me and my flatmate were there. And I saw my friend Tom, who I used to live with, and he was online on Xbox, and I saw he was online on Fortnite. And I messaged him, and I was like, "Is that game any good?" I've heard a couple things about it. And I think this would have been around like Chapter 1, Season 3 at the time.
Okay.
I just messaged him. I was like, is it any good? And his reply, 2 words, he just said, "It's free." I was like, oh,
the Nick A30, the Nick A30 route. It's Fortnite. It's free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah. Maybe he knew the meme at the time,
Yeah.
No, that's great. So that obviously was a hard sell. So I immediately downloaded it on the Xbox that I had at the time, connected to my TV, and like game 1, I was hooked. I absolutely loved it. I was horrific. Like not much has changed to this day, but I was awful. It took me 10 games to get my first elim, basically. So rough, and then my flatmate jumped on and got like 5 kill win the first game he ever played, and then he never touched the game again. And I just thought, right, I hate you, obviously. So yeah, basically that was kind of like the transition. I've pretty much always played games my entire life, and I think it was kind of like just a natural progression to switch into Fortnite because it was free only, obviously.
Sure. So I think I'm gonna ask you this question in a little bit of a different vein later on, but I wanted to ask you this initially. What was the attraction to the game? Because I've been kind of finding recently that even amongst the competitive community, there's a little bit of disagreement or different reasonings for why people are in love with the game. Like for me, I think it was the amount of control that you have relative to every other shooter that is out there. When with building and editing as mechanics, it's this chess match. It's more about outplaying your opponent and outsmarting them and changing the terrain as you go, than it is about shooting. Like, yes, your aim and all of that is important, but when you look at any other game, the primary mechanics are aiming and movement for the most part. Whereas Fortnite, it's the primary mechanics are adapting the environment to best suit your needs and not your opponents. But what was the draw for you initially if you could
I think
place
your
it.
answer is fantastic. If I was going to answer now, if you asked me like why am I still playing this game now, I would just copy and paste what you just said because I think that's phenomenal. You know, and but back then I was awful, and that almost wasn't even a consideration, right? So it's like, I mean, I was trying to build whatever I could, but it wasn't happening, and as most people were in their first season of playing. To be honest, I think the first thing that really attracted me in at the time was just the fact that I had friends that were playing it, and it was free, as much as it was. Obviously, there's really addictive, just the battle royale format. I always looked at other battle royales because I was a console gamer, not playing on PC at that time.
Right.
It's like I'd seen clips of, you know, AZ and all these other battle royales and wherever they were at the time, and I always thought that format looked really fun, and I always wanted to play some form of battle royale. And then when my friends were playing at the time, I thought that's perfect. Like we can all get in, and it was just an immediate hook of like that trying to win, sucking, continually trying to win again, being worse than the last game, and trying to kind of scrape through and continually progress and get better. And then I think one of the things that kept me playing for a long time was just like I thought I was getting much better really quickly, and then you just get absolutely dunked on by someone who is really good.
Yeah.
And you sit and you think, and I'm like, oh, there's way higher skill ceilings than what I've ever possibly seen at this time.
Skill gap.
Yeah. And I 100% would echo that. The mechanics are so complex that you just there's no, I don't want to say there's no skill ceiling, but there's essentially not one that I don't think we'll ever truly reach, just because there's no mastery of it. There's an ever evolving skill ceiling, and it's ever being pushed, to crazier new heights, especially every time they add a new mechanic. I remember when like sliding came out for the first time, and people were going nuts and free building and all that stuff. And I think it is, I think for people who have that innate competitive desire to want to ever be improving at something, there's no true mastery. I mean, you look at a CS, you look at a Valorant, like there's going to be a point where everyone's kind of at the same, level. Like you look at a professional Valorant match, like those guys, it comes down to, I don't want to say a 50-50 because that's a little bit reductionist, but essentially it's, what guy does the micro adjustment better and shoots, within a couple of milliseconds first. And like, but you look at, a pro player, in Fortnite, like you look at a Peterbot versus all these other people, it's just there's this unbelievable skill gap that just keeps widening. And I think the Dunning-Kruger thing I don't think applies so much in Fortnite. Like people can watch that and like the average player and an average pro, there's just it's a world of difference, and you're just like I don't even know what he's doing. And that's something that SPG and I have talked about in regards to difficulties on the broadcast. Because how do you highlight that difference, but still make it digestible for the people who don't understand what's going on in this realm of thought? What the player is actually thinking when they do every move that they do. And your educational content is actually really good, I think, at breaking that down kind of systematically. But I kind of want to get to, so obviously you start playing and you're enjoying the game. How did that progress into, kind of the world that you got into where you're heavily involved and you're making this educational content and casting? Which one came first, by the way? Were you a caster first, or were you making
educational content first?
Okay.
So I was picked up for casting because I was making educational content originally.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, how I got to that certain point where I decided to start making educational content was. It was a strange path because just like being rubbish at the start of the game, I still continued to be rubbish for years going on. Right? Towards the end of like chapter 1, I was at the point where I started to see guys like Balla TW making like these educational contents, VOD reviews, stuff like that. I was playing as many tournaments I could, not doing well in them whatsoever. I'd at this point bought a PC and I was still playing like controller on PC, but I bought like a pre-built and it crashed at least twice every tournament. So I played World Cup qualifiers and like I crashed twice every single. So like I just lost 2 games immediately. So I was on top of that, not good. I was trying to be smart, but then I was just like sometimes the games you do well, the PC just crashes and all goes wrong. Anyway, on top of that, I was just crap. So I just loving playing like the original pop-up cups back in like 2018, the World Cup qualifiers. Started to get into like FNCS and found like a group of people to play with and whatnot. And the way I transitioned just from playing into content was, again, I saw guys like Balla making the educational content, and I wanted to take like a deep look into my own like gameplay and not to make content out of it. But I was like, I suck at X. And then I jumped into the VODs because I was able to see that it was possible because of Bola. And then I went in and I was like, oh, this is how a pro fixes this problem that I'm doing. And then I was on Reddit a lot of the time because, I mean, in chapter 1, the competitive Reddit was absolutely bouncing.
Yeah.
So I'd usually like reply to a lot of the comments and like I'll just try to help people out as much as I could. And it started to become easier just to make a short little video on specific things. So like the start of 2020, I ended up making just like a couple little small tips and tricks. And then I was like, no one's really doing like a good video. Like no one's doing like a 5 to 10 minute video where you just analyze someone's tournament because all of them were just like 1 to 2 hours VODs that were on YouTube at the time. And if you can't sit and digest that, you know, it was tough. So it just kind of started from there, and then it ended up snowballing. So again, it all just came from me being crap and just trying to get better.
So I'm kind of interested. So you were an engineer of some kind before.
So I was a construction cost consultant. So essentially I worked with like engineers, architects in construction to essentially make sure that you're not getting scammed by a builder and a contractor to save you as much money as possible so that they can pay you more money to save money in a sense,
interesting,
in the easiest way.
Okay. Do you think that informed how you how you approach getting better at the game, or you know how you do your content, like your business now? Do you think like your professional life before has informed your, I don't want to say Fortnite life, but your career now?
Yeah. I actually, you know what's funny is I almost think the other way around, because I feel like if I was to go back, which I have absolutely no intention of doing ever, I feel like the stuff I've done in Fortnite and the way of like done more presentation work, worked on speaking, done all of like script writing, talking, all of this like different skills that you have across the last couple of years. I feel like now going back into an office job would make things like 10 times easier because to be honest, like I was never really that super interested in being a construction cost consultant. I know it sounds very luxurious and really, really fun. Trust me, I know. But at the end of the day, it was like, it was just a job. Went to uni, studied, did it. I know it makes good money. People in my family did it. Told me it was easy. That was wrong. Told me it made you good money. That was also kind of wrong. So thanks, guys. But like I kind of just like cruised by on that for the most part, just to finish the day, and then you have the rest of the evening to do whatever it was. Like I feel like a lot of people do with their kind of day-to-day jobs. So I did learn a lot in that, in particular more like negotiation and contract skills, because that was kind of what I was doing a lot of. So I don't particularly need managers and things like that now if anyone wants to do brand deals or any of those type of things. So I think that's translated really well. And also just the understanding of like the pitfalls of contracts that you can fall into if you don't have like good ways to get out of it and all these other things. I think that was really, really useful. But to be honest, I think most of the useful skills I've developed in my life have been after the age of 25, once I left that, and once you're just kind of like thrown into the deep end, you know?
Sure. Okay, so we're on Reddit of all things, the competitive Reddit. We're making so now we've kind of found this niche that is addressing this issue of digestible educational content for the game. Did you see like results pretty instantly, or was it just more like you were just doing it because you wanted to address a need in the community?
I bet both. I mean, I saw immediate results, like absolutely. Like the first video I ever did, which wasn't just like a small like 1 minute tip or something like that, was a VOD review on I think Assault, who had won like a random third-party tournament. I think it was like a practice server tournament or something like that. He had won, and he'd streamed it, so I just downloaded the VOD, did like a 5 minute, and I think I uploaded that to YouTube, but then I also uploaded it direct to Reddit, and the Reddit post did really good. I can't remember like how many upvotes or whatever it was, but like that YouTube video got like 1,000 views. I was like, oh, cool, that's pretty awesome. And then the next one, I know a lot of people at the time were asking for like console related stuff, and there's a big community for that and whatnot. So I did like a console VOD review, and that got like 10K views on YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's pretty goddamn good, because that's my second video ever. And over the course of like a couple months, that one went up to like 50,000, and I thought, wow, there's obviously like a big audience for this digestible content at that size of time. So I definitely saw like immediate results. I think one of the things that almost like tricked me into a false sense of security though, because I was like, this is just linear, right? This just keeps going up. That's how it works. It can only get better. So I think it came to the point, like, so I think I'll skip ahead a little bit of how I ended up transitioning into full time, because essentially during COVID, like, ended up gone furlough, and essentially that means like government pay in the UK, just because essentially it was like the government did some sort of scheme where if you weren't getting enough work, like obviously construction, no one's allowed out of their house, so it was a construction cost consultant job. So there's nothing to cost consult over a few months. So essentially, I was like just at home, just getting paid by essentially the government was paying my salary for it ended up being like 3-4 months. Which I'm very thankful for. That's why I paid my taxes now, you know. So during that time, I was just making a bunch of content, and I got to the point where I made like £500 in a month, so like $600, whatever it was. I was like, next month, surely I'll make like 1,000 or something like that. And I was like, you know, then I ended up losing my job after because government furlough stopped, and then the companies had to pay, but there was a lot less work. So essentially, they ended up just being like, right, we have to cut off a bunch of our staff. And I just switched to a new job before that, so it's like I was new, basically went straight on furlough, and they were like, sorry, you're gonna have to go. So that was the point where, you know, I was like, cool, £500 now. Next month I can make 1,000, maybe 1,500, 2,000, and I'm doing other bits and bobs at the same time. So like all adds up money wise. I was like, cool, this is a good, you know, this is great. But like that £500 was a really good month at the time. So it was almost like, you know, the success early on ended up not being so useful because it was essentially the next month might have been like £200 and then 300 and on from that month. So yeah.
How do you I guess decide what you're going to like do a video on? Like I know now it probably has like a pretty easy flow. Like I know, like, you know, when Marius dropped a 40 something bomb or whatever, that's super relevant. So you're just like, yeah, let me hop in and make a, but like, especially the beginning. Cause you know, the understanding, like the BR goes so deep. There's so much that goes into every decision and every moment of a game. So how do you decide what to analyze and all that stuff, especially early on? Like, what was that process like?
Early on, it was just like whatever idea excited me, you know, at the time. And again, a lot of that was just, what do I suck at and what do I need to improve on? And then it became more about like, okay, what is there a demand for? What do other people suck at? What's common? Nowadays, it's more what I think is interesting just generally, because I think over the years, I've tried to develop a really like a skill set where I can take a really boring idea and try turn it into an interesting video. That was my goal for a long time, where I was like, I want to have the most awful content but be able to make it interesting and fun. So because and as an example of that, the most recent video I put out was like, it was a video on coin flip, right? It was the summer skirmish coin flip video, right? And if I told you what the original idea for that was, a video on tiebreakers in tournaments. Like, that's just, you're going to fall asleep. That's so boring. But I knew at the same time, I'm like, there's got to be a way I can make this interesting. And if you find moments of like famous coin flip, that's a tiebreaker, it's 50-50, and you can kind of showcase an idea in a certain way. So it's more now, if you have a good idea and then you have a good way to package it, you have a massively successful video. But I always wanted to be able to just choose whatever ideas I wanted. And if they were boring, then I could still make a good video of it. If it doesn't do well, that's fine. But it's been maybe a week of my work or whatever. So the process more now for coming up with ideas is basically at all times I have like a Google document sheet. I've called it YouTube Masterclass. It's not because I'm like selling it as a masterclass. It's just, I just don't have a better name for it at all. And like anytime I think of a tip or I think of an idea or I see something, it goes in like a section of it, right? If it's like if I watch a video, if I'm just mindlessly scrolling on my phone in the morning or something and I see like a TikTok that has like a really good hook at the start of it, write it down, just put it in this doc. If I have like a YouTube idea, if something happens, like you said, the Marius one, that's straight in the video list straight away. And so like over time, I have like just a massive big collection of predominantly awful video ideas that I'm like, oh, this could make a fun video on. This could not. This could. And as time goes on, like it just expands and expands. So then when a month starts, this is what I try to do, which doesn't actually happen. I try to like pick apart 4 videos, like one a week or something, that I'll do this, and this will be how like the month will do. And then I'll try to pick the best of those ideas and just kind of repeat. So, you know, I have a continual process of like thinking and trying to come up with ideas as time goes on. And even then, if they're not great ideas, have tried to come up with good ways to make them good videos anyway.
Yeah. I love,
oh my God. Yeah.
I love the thing that you touched on there, of kind of being a constant sponge. I think for creatives, it's so important to draw inspiration from anywhere and everywhere. I see too many people limit themselves to emulation or to just putting themselves in a box. And you never know where some fantastic idea is going to come from. I think a lot of inspiration comes from the most random of places. You're watching something, or you see something on the street, and you're like, oh wow, that and you're just constantly being in that state of mind and being a sponge. So I just wanted to highlight that a little bit. Vishal, what did you have?
No, I was gonna say first thing he said masterclass, and I thought of DJ, and I was like, wait, this guy plays with DJ.
Yep.
I'm taking all his ideas straight away.
Yep.
So one thing I actually want to try here is you don't have to talk about the exact like 100 through 100, 0 to 100 process, because I don't want you to leak how you do your YouTube videos. But if I pointed out a video, would you be able to go through it and just tell me like how you kind of got from 0 to 100 with this?
Let's see. Yeah, give me a shot.
Okay.
Give me a shot. Let's see.
Okay. So let's start like first video. Accused cheaters to actual champions: the rise of Malibu and Mustache. Longer one,
video.
The longer one, yeah.
Yeah. So basically that idea started because I didn't want to do that video, right? Because here's the thing, I don't want to talk about cheaters that much. Multiple reasons.
100%.
Oh wait, sorry, I was getting confused. That was the Malibuca one. Sorry, I was thinking of a different video.
Okay.
I'll backtrack on this one. Yeah, that one. That's slightly different. That video is every single FNCS Grand Finals. For a long time I've wanted to do a big video. So there are what I call normal videos, and then there's the big videos. So if FNCS is over, there's a winner. There's probably going to be a really good story, whether it's like their come up into their FNCS Grands, all of that kind of stuff put together. That's like, to me, that's just a big video. That's worth spending like 2 weeks on or something like that for me personally. And I've done like 5 or 6 big videos. I used to do big videos back in, when I first started. Like, I used to VOD review every single winner from every single region.
I do remember watching those.
Like, some of those were big videos that I didn't know how to make good videos. So it would be like, I spend 2 weeks and there's some cool stuff in there, but it's just a lot of time wasted. So that video in particular, I'm trying to do every single region, or not every region, that's definitely not what I do, every single FNCS majors winners. So a big video on every single one. So that's the first one of the year that I've essentially done. And the process of that video is like, okay, so whoever, as soon as they win, I know I have to try and map it out. I'm like, okay, so there's essentially going to be 2 main parts of the video. It's going to be the lead up to FNCS, and then the actual analysis of FNCS itself. And the video is very much so split into that. And luckily for me, I'm a Malibuca and Mustache stan. So most of their lead up, I already know. Then it just becomes down to like actually interviewing Malibuca, which was very useful. He was down to do it. So then I've got like all of the additional stuff that most people probably wouldn't have if you just like look through their tweets or knew their story or whatever. And that is essentially, I've already got covered 2/3 of the video there. But that in itself is also like 5 days of writing and researching, all that kind of stuff. Then it becomes into the second part where it's more just like an analysis of any other gameplay, like I do for the most part, where it's you have 12 games, you jump into the first one, and from the most part, when I'm trying to figure if it's a 12-game tournament, I don't sit and watch start to finish 12 games analyzing every single bit, because just the sheer time investment in that is so bad. So 100%. The first part is there's a good few websites you can use for that. Like Assyrian now is really good, where you can just load in, you can see from a map view, you can see kind of an overview, and sometimes just from a match history, you can kind of tell what happened anyway, right? Like you can see like, oh, maybe their first day was good, second day went wrong, so I have an idea in my head like, what happened there? So it's trying to list a bunch of trying to do like as much information as possible in a short period of time, and then trying to break that down into the specifics. And that in itself just tells the story of like the 12 games or the 2 days, right? Like if you can break it down to as simple as something as they did really good the first day and awful the second day, how, like, what happened? That's the immediate question that comes to you, and then it becomes about answering that question. That's not what happened in this tournament whatsoever, but that was just the easiest way to explain it. So that essentially becomes the process.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think I would attribute your success in content for the most part due to just the effort that you put in and the work ethic. Like I wouldn't just call it high quality, I'd call it high effort. And I do think that there's a distinction there. Like I know that like my buddy T Church, when he started doing content, was like we love T. Was taking a lot of inspiration from you, and like even like the B-roll shots from replay mode and like all the stuff that you were doing that was implementing, that was just making this really high quality production for every video. Would you Would you agree? Do you think that that's like that you just put in more effort than a lot of the other people competing in the space?
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I mean, the first thing I think I want to put out there is there's not really other people competing in the space for this type of content, which makes it stand out in its own. I think I love big, as I've maybe already mentioned. I love big videos. I love high effort. I love like spend a bunch of time on something.
Yeah,
like delivering what I've never done a masterpiece in my mind because there's always lots of things to improve on. But like my ideal would be like one video a month and it's a legit masterpiece. You know, you just put out something I'm like I'm really proud of. But I mean the financials of that don't work out so well. So, you know, I do more videos. But I think for me, I've always wanted to put out something that's good. And most importantly, I think I've tried to improve every video as it goes on, whether it's, you know, through more time into each video or just faster at the thing, like finding a better process, whatever it is. So if you put a bunch of time into something for 5 years, or has it been 5 years? No, thank God. It's only been 4. I was dating myself even quicker there, right? For 4 years, and you learn something every single video, every single time you do it, then you're naturally just going to make what is, at the end of the day, like a high quality piece of content. I think my idea on the high effort side of things is I compare a lot of my content to other people outside of Fortnite, and I don't consider what I do honestly to be as high effort as other people because I think there's quite a low standard in the Fortnite space generally. Because I don't really know many people who like upload infrequently and put a bunch of time into their content, so mine does stand out naturally. But I look at like I said, I'm a Pokemon fan. If you ever like watch some of the Pokemon content, like these guys go hard, you know, like they put months into a video, and like I can't do that. I just because I want to try obviously make it from a business side, make it a bit more sustainable. So I think like I would love the high effort ones, but I try to be as efficient as possible so that it looks high effort and high quality.
Yeah.
Whilst just putting like, you know, a week is basically with me and the guy I've got help me edit now is like the maximum I want to put into one unless it's a big video.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So you said you were a Mustache and Malabuka. You're a pretty big fan of them as a duo.
Yes.
So that I feel like helps a lot with video ideating and all that creation to it. If this was a duo that, you know, you know in the comm because of course they place and all that and they're known by other people. If it was some duo that you didn't know, how would you go differently about it?
Boy, you've just asked a great question there, because this is actually one of the things that I found doing analysis on a broadcast to be incredibly difficult, and making YouTube content is even harder on it, right? The best place for that information is, as always, asking the actual players, right? And a good interview will get you 95% of the way, and you can do your own analysis after that. But I do understand that most people don't have access to that kind of information, right? They don't have, like, if you're just starting out making content, a lot of times you're not going to get like a tier 1 pro to spend 2 hours with you talking about them, their time, right? So it's an advantage I have, which I'm always thankful for. And a lot of pros also don't reply to my message when I ask them for an interview, so I'm not excluded for that either. So what I would usually end up doing is, it kind of depends on what I want to do. If I want to find out about the players individually, their backstory, their history, it starts with looking at their placements. That's it, right? That's where everyone goes. I feel like you look at the placements, see what they've done, where's the trajectory, where's it going, who have they played with, all this kind of stuff. And I feel like most people stop there, but that is the result of the story. That is not the story. You know, I could tell you, if you know, I'm not trying to poke shame anyone, because there's a lot of people who do like Reisshub and story videos, but that's where most people's videos end up stopping, right? It's literally just like the result of the story. They placed here, they played with this person, they placed here, they placed with this person. What an actual story is like, how did they do that? Like, what was the result of that? And the reason a lot of people don't end up doing that is because that's the part that does take time. So you found like the baseline. The next part, what you can do is firstly go through their Twitter. Good luck with that. It's an absolute pain to scroll through Fortnite players' Twitters for 4 years, you know, to see how awful some of the tweets are. That's the last step for me. That's not my next step. But if you want to find like new bits and bobs, that's usually useful. But the next part is literally, for me, is I find those tournaments, say for example, say a really good placement 2 years ago or something like that. There's a video of that somewhere, whether they posted it or the Fortnite streamed it, wherever it was. You can find that, and you can start breaking it apart by watching through it, finding things they did, even if they're not on perspective for much. You can start to build like with all these other clues. So, if I hadn't seen what happened in, a certain season for a player, I can go back and watch that broadcast, and you can just skip through and try to find bits of analysis from whatever that may be, and then piece them together as time goes on. It's all very time consuming, and that's one of the things that, like,
100%.
broadcast wise, the biggest thing in my space is that there's no website that has good, like, historical analysis for Fortnite ever. So all of this kind of stuff is very, very manual at the minute. Hopefully guys like Asurian will make, like, continue to keep, like, historic data on as well, so that we can look back. But if I wanted to see who did the most damage in an FNCS 2 years ago, like, you can't do that. I can't find historic trends for a player. I could just basically see their placements. So you basically have to start there, and however much work you're willing to put in to figure out the rest is however much you find out.
The story thing has been a conversation that I've had several times, especially recently. Just in content as a whole. Like I retweeted something of Mr. Beast the other day where he said, like, his most recent video, he really wanted to focus on stories and just highlighting people in that way. And I do feel like we've had this distinct kind of shift away from that in content. It's moved a lot towards shock factor and surface level. And I think something that you talked about too is a major issue that I've seen with creators of, like, as soon as it starts to become a financial crutch for you, or something where it's part of what is supporting your life, people feel this pressure to pump out more consistent content than maybe quality content, and just all this stuff. So much starts to get sacrificed in lieu of trying to make sure that you get something out that's going to accumulate revenue consistently. But the story thing is something that really I find interesting, because I do think that we're seeing this kind of slow return to it, and that's what people thrive on, and esports too. My whole theory with esports is that that's what it needs, that's what it thrives off of, that's what people love. I mean, like, I've been getting into Call of Duty a lot more recently, and watching, like, COD majors, and the most recent in-person COD major was FaZe and Optic in the finals, which is just, you couldn't write a better story. Optic, this giant that's been around for 20 years, FaZe, obviously one of the biggest names in the COD scene, and just that rivalry has been brewing for so long, and that's what it thrives off of so well. So yeah, I mean, people love stories. They cling to them. They want them. That's, I think that's what it is. And like, the owner of my current org, Teddy, runs We Clutch Up, and he's kind of a similar vein of thinking. Obviously, that all those videos are storylines, and highlighting that to some degree. So I enjoy that, and I think that it's a good direction for content. Yeah,
I think if you talk to anyone ever in person, you're most of the time telling them a story.
Yeah,
and if people are highly engaged in your conversation, most of the time it's because you're doing a good job telling them a story. Obviously, everything I've said to you today has pretty much been a story of individually of how certain things are done. Some things been told well, some things have not, right? But that's the nature of what it is. And people inherently, if you're discussing with another person, you're most of the time discussing stories. Sometimes you're talking about some absolute rubbish that you saw, but it is what it is. Like, stories between two people. The more people you speak to, the more stories you bring, and so on and so forth. And every single piece of content is a story if you want it to be successful at the end of the day. And even the Mr. Beast style ripoffs that you're mentioning, where you have people who have essentially tried to replicate the formula that he had, there is still a story structure formula in a lot of it in the previous stuff, right? It's just maybe not what you would say is like a 3-act structure, or something like that, right?
Or
it's
just lacking depth, kind of like you said, like more of a surface level type of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so everything is a story. It just depends on what matters, right? And you can see, like, content with pretty limited story can still do good, as long as there's, like, a trail to follow. If there's a question you open up in someone's mind, they'll wait as long as possible to figure out what it is. Like some of the Mr. Beast stuff, right? Like, how much am I going to blow up right now? That's a question which will keep you entertained, and there is a story that goes along because it all leads to what is going to blow up. But it's more now, I think the emotional depth is trying to be added into that. There's consequences, and that's more relatable to people. And that's kind of the way I'm trying, obviously not everything you're going to have some emotional consequences in Fortnite content, but where possible, that's where I try to humanize it in a sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to talk about kind of the relationship. When you were making this and you were developing these skill sets and getting deeper in your content, and kind of developing this rhythm, and growing along the way. When you get approached to do the casting, what was the kind of relationship with? How did they inform each other? And how did that change kind of your routine, and what were you spending more effort on, and all of that type of stuff?
That's a good question, because to start with, so I started content really in January 2020, and I was approached by Epic in September. So when I told you I lost my job due to the COVID stuff, I made a tweet to basically be like, yo, any orgs looking for a content creator, because I need some money here. I want to do this full time. And I made the decision. I told my girlfriend, like, we live in London, and I was like, we're in expensive rent. Obviously, I was used to a good job, and I was like, I'm going to give this a crack. I've lost my job. I'm going to try and see if I can make it work. And this was September. I was like, we'll see how it is by the end of the year. Like, I have money to keep me going. I can pay the rent, even if I make no money for a few months, and we'll see how it goes. But because I made that tweet, I think it was Sundown who saw it, who was working on the broadcast at the time. He was like, this guy can analyze. He understands the game. He'd seen my tweets already. I've seen a couple of people from Epic had commented on them and stuff like that. So he saw that tweet, and he was like, get this guy on the broadcast as an analyst, because I think that was also the time that Bala had just stopped working on the broadcast. So it's like they needed someone to analyze, and it was like it was kind of like perfect timing. So my skill set of learning about the game was very useful, but all I knew about was I just knew how to analyze the game. Like, I don't know anything about the cameras, how to do production, how to do any of this kind of stuff. So like my first ever broadcast, being like an analyst, was literally the first FNCS show I ever did, which was horrifically scary to start with. But at the end of the day, like, if you're with good people, like at the time I was with Shayo and Zeke, and they had done it plenty of times before. They were confident. They just guided me like while we're on camera. Like, they set me up with good questions. They knew that I knew to answer, because I'd been analyzing Fortnite and I had that knowledge. And then as time goes on, I was just trying to refine that. And then you say interesting thing about like, what do I spend time on? That's kind of what I alluded to a bit earlier when I said, I made £500 on YouTube. That would have been August. September comes, I get this job, I made a couple hundred. So it's like, obviously the money in casting and analysts is really good for broadcast work. So the time went more into creating the skills for that, and YouTube became like more the second thing. And then because when you're doing that, you essentially you'll do a month on, because that's when FNCS is, and then you might have like a month off or a bit. So during that time, then I'd pump up more into YouTube, and I'd kind of like try and balance it out a little bit more that way. Which is why, like, since I stopped doing broadcast work, I've been able to like full-time YouTube, and that's hence why it's gone a lot better at that point.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Vishal.
So the reason I want to talk about like getting taken off the broadcast a little bit more is because I was actually watching. Have you ever seen the Brand Risk podcast?
Yeah.
Arab and Edwin, so that's kind of where we formulated from, like continue it after Arab left. But I was watching the Aussie Antics podcast the other day, and this was around the time that he got taken off for everything that happened during the solos FNCS. And I want to talk about the fact that he talked about how as soon as he got taken off, you were added on it, and he was so happy for you being added on and all that. And then about a year and a half later, during invitationals, is when you got taken off. And you could say that the reaction from the community on Aussie side, when he was, near his peak, and that's when he had more viewers in the Fortnite broadcast himself, is kind of the reaction the community gave to you when you were taking off the broadcast for the invitational. How did that kind of affect you? Like, how did it kind of first impressions of being told that you weren't going to be a part of the invitational broadcast, which is something I would say that you were working up towards?
Absolutely. Can I swear on here?
Oh, go ahead.
100%.
I was fucking fuming.
Understandably.
I'm generally quite like I'm a mild-tempered person for the most part. I don't, no, I'm not overly emotional generally, but for the time since when I started working on the broadcast up until that point, like, I really had committed the time to trying to make myself the best Fortnite analyst in the world. That was the goal. And mainly so that when big like things like the Invitational and Globals came, that I would be like number one pick. It's like, oh, we have Reese, and who's going with him? Like that. That was kind of the idea, right? So I'd also, quite frank, like, I'd given up streaming completely, because it's like I can only balance so many times. I was obviously my own YouTube channel. I was, doing essentially part-time instead of doing full-time because of that. So I'd put a lot into broadcast in terms of time. If you if you ever worked on a broadcast, you'll know that, because the time I put into my YouTube videos now was kind of the time I'd put into prep for most of those too. So when it came to like not being picked for the invitational, I was indeed fuming, of course.
Yeah.
Didn't go down well. Had a call with Epic to discuss, and it was not very. I was not very pleasant. I wouldn't swear, or I wasn't like super rude to them, but understandably emotional. Like I'd been on the broadcast for 2 years, so I wasn't too happy about it.
I think that I can speak for myself, but I do think I speak for most of the community at the time, where everyone was really confused, because it was like, he's the best at this. Like it was like Vishal already pointed out, it was a very weird parallel to the Aussie event, whatever, a year and a half earlier or whatever that was. Where it was just like, this is the best talent. Like you're the fan favorite. You're the best talent that we have. So everyone was just like, why the fuck is he that is not a knock on any of the other talent. I love everyone that gets on that stage and everyone that contributes to the broadcast and all of that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it is like, to me, it's not a broadcast without some of the key players, and that's like that was you for me. But I want to get to this question, because Aussie would go on to say, and other people would go on to say on his behalf, that was one of the best things that ever happened to him, which you can definitely argue is the case.
Definitely. Yeah.
Would you say that? Would you say the same for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's interesting retrospect, because at the time it was an interesting like combination of things that happened at that moment, because that was chapter 3, and it was towards the end of chapter 3. And if anyone remembers anything about how that was content and like interest in Fortnite wise, awful.
Yeah,
awful.
Yeah,
right.
So that prime shotgun season was
yeah.
I think content wise it was horrendous at the time.
It was like I remember then the videos I was spending a week on were like getting 30K views, and I'm like, this is meant to be like a full-time job for me at this moment. And if I'm doing what, that's just not cutting it. So it was like a lot of things kind of happened at once, where then I'm not on the broadcast anymore. Fortnite content's doing poorly. However, what I will say is, in that meeting I had with Epic, they said, this is just for the invitational. So like, we're just not picking you here. And next year we'll pick up, which just also was not true, because they just they never spoke to me again, which is how they literally just never spoke to me after that. And that's how I did email them like, yo, you guys, what's happening here? And they just repeatedly ignored it. So we love Epic Games communication policy. They're fucking awful. So
yikes.
Anyone on a broadcast should be setting themselves up with secondary income in case, because like I was lucky, because at that time the point I was making there was, sure, content did bad, but it picked up again at the end of the year. And I fully stopped doing Fortnite content, because I was like, I mean, I can, like, I was obviously pissed off because I'm not doing the broadcast stuff that I put so much time into, and Fortnite content wasn't doing good. So it was this kind of combination where I sat and I thought, the reality here is I've learned how to make YouTube videos now. I can switch over and do other style of content, which I did do for 2 months. And then I was like, I have a channel with 100,000 subscribers now, what it just hit at the time. I was like, I should probably do these simultaneously. And then and because I'd taken like a good break, I'd stopped being annoyed about not being an analyst for the stuff anymore. And then I was also just like, I really enjoy this game. And I'll be a bigger man and not just be like, I'm not on the broadcast, I'm gonna leave Fortnite altogether.
Sure.
So I came back and started making that content. I was like, this is really enjoyable. And at that time, because chapter 3 was over, content started to do really good, and then it just kind of picked up, of course, over the course of the last year.
I think the best thing that they could have done at Invitational was, with how much hype was already around it for the first LAN event back, they announced a new chapter. That was 100% one of the best decisions they could have made, without doing just an online announcement in front of everybody and saying it was going to be a surprise. Because no one, as much as we thought we wanted the chapter to end, no one thought after only 4 seasons of the chapter would the entire chapter just close down and go into a whole new thing. And the thing that happens is, at the beginning of every chapter, everybody comes back to try it out. So the first season of every chapter always blows up.
They revived the game with that 100%. It was defibrillator
But
to a
the
dying.
problem, the problem that happened is that now that you have such high expectations from your chapter 4 season 1, your chapter 4 season 2, if it doesn't match up to at least one thing, or it doesn't match up to one thing at most, it's just, it gets turned off and half your viewership get cut, and then content goes down and people start complaining, and then it's just a spiral, and then it's a cycle again. Same thing at this chapter. Chapter 5 season 1, they came back. Now this season, people are like, oh, what's this?
I don't want to get too deep into this. I think chapter 4 was actually like, it's up there for me. Like I really enjoyed chapter 4.
I like the beginning a lot.
It may be higher than like 3, 5, maybe even 1. I feel like 1 is so nostalgia fueled now. Like when you look at the game objectively, I feel like OG did this a little bit for me too. I was like, wow, this is not as fantastic as I remember.
Good balance.
Yeah, no. Everything from the map to the weapon pool, like all of that, I was just like, wow. Like it was nice to revisit it and like have those memories, and like obviously the influx of people like made content really good around the time, and it was just kind of fun. But I was really like, wow. But no, I felt like chapter 4 was really solid. We had movement metas, and I know you just tweeted about this, like the no movement meta thing and all of that. Like the hammer and katana season were just prime to me. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that for extremely long.
I agree with you. That's a based opinion right there.
Good. I'm glad I get the seal of approval there. So so obviously like you said, that was kind of the best thing that could have happened to you. I feel like this question is maybe a gimme, but do you enjoy being an independent creator more than being tied to the broadcast and all the rules and all that stuff? I know Aussie kind of touched on that when he departed.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think what people say by rules when they talk about the broadcast is always kind of interesting, because they don't really have that many rules. Like, you can't swear, you can't call Epic Games dumb as shit. You can't just you do the obvious stuff that people are putting money in your pockets, right? Like you're working for an employer at the end of the day. So it's not that there's necessarily so many rules. It's just that you don't want to be dumb and do stupid things. Like if I was going to make a tweet while I was working on the broadcast, I'm always like, whether one thing I will say is whether I've been speaking to Epic or tweeting, I'm always very truthful. Like I will say my thoughts anyway, right?
That's
like
what I
if
was
I think
gonna
something's
ask.
bad, I'll say like, I don't like this, I don't think this is good, all these kind of things.
The reason I asked that is the reason that's why I was gonna ask something like that before you started going on the point is because I know Aussie, before the whole solo all-star stuff, he was saying he was getting into controversy with Epic because the videos he was making after every tournament or every day were going like, oh, he was in disagreements with this item, or he's in disagreements with this season, or they didn't disagree. Especially, oh my god, the worst thing they could have done, the preseason. Holy shit. The worst addition they could have added to the game, and the worst Fortnite season at the time.
Killed every season that they did that.
And I think everybody was on Aussie's side with that. But because he was disagreeing with the Epic standpoint, he was saying on the Branders podcast, from what I was listening, and he's obviously said it on his stream, he was having controversy, and he was already having talks and meetings with Epic saying like, oh, we don't like it when you do this, we don't like it when you do that. But he was like, at the same time, I'm going to say what I want to say. No one's changing that. So I feel like you follow that, like what you were saying, like you're going to say what you want to say regardless of the disagreements.
Definitely. I never had anyone speak to me about the way I'm saying anything, but I think the main difference between me and Aussie is that I was always very respectful in the way I said things, because I was maybe a little more cognizant. And still to this day, like I don't I tweet the same now as if I was hired by them. I still have the same opinions. There's just specific ways in which you can use negative feedback. Now, to their face, I was a bit more brash, to be honest with you. But like, when it comes to like making public opinions and things like that, if it's only beneficial for everyone, including Epic, if you tell them something isn't balanced in a respectful way. Show them why. Say something's not a good decision and you disagree with it. Like, there's no issues there. It's more about the way in which you do that. Like Aussie was always just like, this is fucking shit, man. He was never like the and that's fine. That's the way he does it. That's all right, and props to him for sticking with that. But it's just like, I've always been more analytical in all things. So I'd rather break it down, and I'm not mad. I mean, mech season I was mad because I was playing.
Yeah,
I was dying. And if I don't know if I had Twitter back then. I need to check to see if I had any spicy tweets about it. But like most things, now I don't get mad enough to make a tweet where I'm like, this is so dumb. It's more just I will give you an opinion on something I don't think is good for the game. And Epic never had a problem with that. I asked a lot about that. So
and that's I think what you're highlighting is, it's clear from Epic's point of view when you are respectful about it and when you are, where it seems like a collaborative effort, it's constructive feedback as just opposed to like, fuck you, Epic Games, and fuck the developers. Like, I mean, like that, because I think a lot of people, and I understand the emotions exist. And yes, I felt those about certain things. But if you're actually trying to create, it's a matter of, are you tweeting to get attention or to, get that opinion validated? Or are you tweeting to like actually try and create change, and sway Epic's opinion and all that stuff? And I think someone with your type of sway or Aussie's type of sway, like, you have to be a lot more, cognizant, like you said, about how you go about that. Like, if you actually want something to change, because they will listen to you, they'll see those tweets. Someone at Epic will. Now, listen to you, I mean, like, implement it. I don't know, but
a funny story about that, because I need to stop leaking stuff in videos, right? Because like I know a lot of people I chat to a good few people at Epic still, not necessarily like the people who are on the broadcast team, because obviously there's a lot of people in different parts and stuff like that. The people who work for Balance or in different competitive teams. There's a broadcast team. There's like a whole host of different people there. I get a message like back and forth about some things, and sometimes when I'll post like a video and it has like something that's kind of broken in it, I'll get a message and it'll be like, and then it changes like 2 days later or something. They'll chat to me about it, and then it'll change, and I'm like, well, now my video is wrong. Like, now what the video says is not correct anymore. Right. So there's an interesting back and forth. So they do pay attention to every like creator, and it, like, I always find it interesting when people are like, Epic Games don't listen to anything people say, and they don't see these tweets and all this kind of stuff. They read everything. Like, whether they decide to take any action based on what you have said or what the community is saying is one thing, because I will say, speaking to a lot of Epic staff about different things at different times, there's usually much better reasons than people would suspect for certain changes. I can't think of any off the top of my head, and I don't necessarily want to just like leak internal things. It would be a good idea. But like, sometimes, there's something will happen in the game and everyone will be outraged about it. And you look and you think there's just no possible good reason for that. But you don't have the data like Epic has the data for a lot of these things. And some of these things they do reverse and they change them and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things where I've changed my mind on as time's gone on, because they've just said like, one simple line to me is like, because of this.
At the end of the day, they are a multi-billion-dollar company with some of the best game developers out there. Like, they do know what they are doing to a degree. Like that's you can't deny that they have expertise and dominion in their respective field. Like, yes, like, and it is, there's a lot of decision making that doesn't get down all the way because of layers of protection and all that stuff, or just stuff that they can't just be like, hey, here's exactly why, and here's all the user data, or whatever. 100%. But I think it's easy as a consumer to get that kind of narrow-minded, egocentric perspective of like, oh, well, this is what I see, so therefore I'm going to critique it based off of only this. And,
with that,
go ahead. And then I'm going to pivot. So okay. No. So if it's on topic, you go first.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, because we were talking about the whole broadcast stuff and then Fortnite speak and all that. I have a tweet pulled up here. It literally 2 hours ago, which is very ironic. So about the time that we started this, someone tweeted Fortnite peaked here, and it was the Fortnite X Travis Scott that happened 4 years ago today. And Donald Mustard right under it says, I disagree.
Yeah.
So, and not even talking about the whole peak thing, but the whole strike of COVID happened 4 years ago, where the game had its blow up again. You would say the secondary blow up because people are stuck at home and all this.
Yeah.
When COVID came around with all that, what was the first impression you had with COVID and content? Like, what was the first click for you?
I mean, the first click for me was, man, I got all this time to make content.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like, COVID stopped me from working my main job, which was an absolute blessing at the time. I think without it, I probably wouldn't have I don't know if I would ever have made it as a content creator, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, it gave me the time and it gave me a leg up, which allowed me to come to broadcast, which allowed me to finance like a year or two of being able to then build the channel up and up to become full time at that. So, you know, it's interesting at the time. I never really thought about it because at the time you're just like, oh, I'll just make some videos and it'll be fun. You know, I didn't think too deeply into it. I thought eventually this is going to end because it's just me just spending some time doing something fun. But looking back at it, I think it was really interesting because ultimately it was like the Kickstarter for my content to essentially be successful.
That reminds me of a quote that I heard recently. You can't connect the dots moving forward. You can only connect the dots looking back. Which I don't know. Like I think about where I've gotten to in all the stuff I've been blessed to be able to do in the esports scene and in the Fortnite scene. Like it all started when I just made a split decision to go to Invitational in Raleigh and then the DreamHack Atlanta the following week. And just I was a nobody. I had 100 followers on Twitter. I'd never been in any org work or like I had been streaming for a little bit, but I had never done YouTube or TikTok or any of that. So I was basically a nobody on paper. And you know, met different people and like met like Bronos and Foxman and like stuff at Invitational, got to talk to people like that. And those connections led to the podcast and getting on Pipeline while that was happening and like just all, and then obviously that domino effect leads all the way to where I am now you know, all that stuff. So it's a really cool thing. I think to be able to trace those like butterfly effect moments and just kind of like, oh wow, like if this one thing had not happened, all of this, you know, amazing stuff after would not have come. So I'm gonna pivot. Just kind of I don't know if I want to open this vague, but we'll see. Like kind of your thoughts on just the current competitive Fortnite landscape. Like there's this narrative where, you know, like competitive is dying or Fortnite is dying, which I think both are just axiomatically untrue. I think if you just take a look at even just community reception, I don't even think you have to look at numbers per se. But you know, I feel like the broadcast, we've seen the quality improve and we've seen, you know, just like all this stuff, and now Blast, you know, being contracted out to run LAN events and all that stuff. But kind of what are your, I guess, general thoughts on the current landscape of competitive Fortnite and then the direction that it's going as well?
Yeah, that's a thumbs up is a good start. You know, it's all positive. Not all positive. Hold on. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, of course, to say all positive.
Yeah.
I'm still human and they are too. But I think from a first point of perspective is that Epic Games seem to be committed to the long term for this. And that in itself is incredibly important because for years, you know, as chapter 2, a season would start and we're like, what's happening? Like, what FNCS are we going to have today? What team mode is it going to be? Like, you know, it's come so far. Obviously, Epic are extremely slow at implementing most things. As it's taken many years to get to this point. But we're in a point in competitive Fortnite where there are consistent tournaments. You know there's going to be consistent tournaments, which is the most important part, which means for average players, they just know there's going to be a tournament to play if they check probably within 2 weeks. Like, you know, there's almost no 2 week gaps with no tournaments ever outside like Christmas, even there you've got it that time, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is like we're in a place where there's consistency all the time. You know what FNCS is, you know what the cash cups are going to be. Fantastic. The second part is Epic are committing massively more to competitive as a whole. Firstly, obviously, like you mentioned, the 4-year deal with Blast is huge. Like, you know, we barely used to know what was going on to start with, but now we have a 4-year commitment to at least to competitive Fortnite. Like, you know, forget everything else. You know that for the next 4 years, we're going to have competitive Fortnite down the line, which for me is someone who talks about competitive Fortnite. Fantastic. Awesome. I have some level of security there. Now, where you mentioned going on like a downward hill, I think that's really interesting because there's always like ebb and flow, as we kind of mentioned a few times with a bunch of the seasons, you know, like hype from new chapter, global championships, OG, and all that stuff. Obviously, we saw like 11 million people was playing Fortnite. That's insane. Like, you can't fathom those kind of numbers. And naturally, as time goes on, some of those people are not going to stick around, right? Like, it's just going to be the way that it is. Some people have joined because of the hype and they don't. And every single year, every single chapter pops off, and we're going to slow down, come towards global championships again. We'll see what happens. It'll probably bump back up. We're going to have another OG season, I imagine. And the whole cycle is going to repeat, kind of as Vishal said, right? So my interest is that, like, where's the low point? because I think what we have to look at over the next 4 years, which is a crazy thing to say, is like, what's the average of every year? Where does it bottom out? Where does it top out? And that's when we'll really be able to see like an answer to that. Because, you know, if the bottoms and the tops of every single year are decreasing over the next 4 years, not good things are happening. If they're increasing or staying steady, like, my God, that's so healthy as time goes on, you know? So I think the idea that Fortnite's dying is like, everyone says
Fortnite as a whole, that claim is just that's outrageous.
Insane.
I mean, Fortnite has wedged itself into a pioneer spot in the industry that I don't think will be touched maybe ever for a very, very long time. I mean, you look at like the whole metaverse of gaming thing, that idea that they have and are really beginning to execute on. Like it's kind of really interesting, I think, seeing the perspective of how they are moving into casting the widest net for the average consumer on that end of it, and then also providing this competitive experience on the like, and you're seeing this like parallel development of them, because I feel like they're both kind of in the similar stages right now. Like, you know, obviously with the chapter release, you know, they released the 3 other what could be fully fledged games. You know, you have Fortnite Festival and Rocket Racing and all of that, and that was just kind of their simplest showcase to say this is what, you know, you'll be capable of doing, and you know, moving into that and creating just the most diverse user experience on Fortnite is essentially moving into being a game hosting platform, which is really interesting. You know, kind of I call it the Robloxification of Fortnite.
I like it.
You know, but then you have this, you know, the parallel development with competitive, and it's in a very similar stage. Like we've seen, you know, the past 2 years, they've moved to this, you know, 3 majors and 1, you know, global LAN a year, and you know, we're kind of seeing them both in the similar stage right now. So it seems they have similar development paths to me, which I think is a really cool thing. It's addressing, you know, the broader of gaming, but also the esports industries and scenes and all of that. And I'm appreciative of that. I want to get your view. You know, kind of we were talking about, you know, now there is some stability finally being introduced to competitive Fortnite, because really it's just like if you were doing this as a career or a job, or even just like trying to for all of the time that Fortnite has existed, you are kind of on edge of like this could end at any given moment. And that doesn't mean that it still can't to a degree, especially if you're like a pro player. Like I heavily emphasize to all the pros that I have talked to, like, please diversify in some way. Please have some kind of other asset that you can pour into and you know, secondarily or whatever. You know, all that stuff. Like I love I've talked about the creator-led businesses a lot, like Epic Whales Mousepad Company and things of that nature. But you know, we're seeing some stability. I'm really interested to hear your perspective on where orgs fit into that, org inclusion in the scene in competitive, because I love organizations. I love all that stuff. And you know, even right now, I think we just kind of have seen the first inklings of official inclusion. Like obviously with ESL, you know, they're doing some partnership stuff with that, which I'm really appreciative of. But like, you know, on the broadcast, I think the first time I ever heard orgs being like officially kind of recognized as an entity and a player within the ecosystem was when Cooper was doing an interview and he was wearing his Dignitas jersey, and they were like, oh yeah, like Dignitas, because like obviously Dignitas is kind of the poster child right now. But what's your view on where they should be and where they could be and all that stuff?
This is really interesting, and there's a lot of depth to this. I could summarize it as I'm not excited by it. No. So here's the thing, right? I do not come from an esports background of other games. So to me, watching any other esport, if I open up Counter-Strike or something like that, you know, and you see Navi versus whatever other team is there, right? I'm like, ooh, it's team v team. You know, you have that kind of structure that's there. And it's almost odd to me, but just purely because it's like I'm so in Fortnite and not into other esports, that when I watch other esports, I'm like, oh yeah, I forget orgs are like, they are the team, they are the play, you know, they are everything almost about it, and then the players form that, of course. So when I look at Fortnite, I've thought, and this has been a video I've been thinking of for a long time. It's been on my many shit ideas list for a long time, but I wanted to do like a deep dive into orgs in Fortnite, and also speaking to people from orgs, most importantly, to try and get like a perspective on what they think. But for me, on everything I think of, I can't seem to find a methodology where orgs fit into Fortnite and it benefits everyone, right? There's a lot of different, say, like, let's say, forget like the ESL stuff first. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Let's say, like, actually in terms of FNCS, because what you said is essentially the height of it so far. They just have their name there. There might be a logo.
Yeah.
You know, in World Cup, they were really harsh about what you could wear.
Yeah.
However, you know, they've loosened up on that to allow orgs, you know, to have some visibility. But it's still like, is that going to make them a successful business model? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I think I've thought, and I'm like, all these suggestions that people have, oh, you could put org skins into the game, you could do all this other things that other games do, and that's great, but like that benefits the orgs. What benefit does that actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, does it actually benefit Epic Games in a massive way, right? Like they have this metaverse where they have huge marketing potential, huge financial opportunities. I find it interesting. I just think like the real question is, why should they give that opportunity and that massive amount of money to organizations? Because they're doing it fine without organizations at this point, right? Like when I see a player signed to a new org, my immediate thought is, I'm like, okay, well, they're just making money from someone else. Awesome. Happy they're catching their bag. But to me, for the most part, like I don't see a difference. Like I'm still going to see that team, even though it says it was, say when it was Cooper and Miro, they won. Like I see that as, oh, it's Dignitas Cooper.
Yeah,
so Cooper and Miro. You're sure if someone's on the broadcast could mention the org, but to me, like there's never been like a deep involvement with them, even though they are there. And I feel like that is a critical issue that makes just the org side unsustainable to start with.
Right. Right. Well, and that's, you know, absolutely. That's the biggest issue, I think, being, you know, obviously it's not a team-based structure in the same vein as a Call of Duty, a Valorant, basically any other esport that exists. It is, you know, either officially or unofficially franchise spots where you have an organization has to enter and they are the ones maintaining a roster and signing under team names and whatever. Fortnite, it's kind of in the reverse because you have intermixed teams of, it can be multiple orgs, or you can have a free agent and a signed player, or any of combination of the, and like, you know, like I know when Pipeline was at its kind of peak or whatever, when we were competing very heavily, you know, we signed a duo and then they split and they stopped playing together. We were like, shit. You know, it's like, and that happens. You know, do you see a possibility, because this is something that I've thought about a lot, like would there be any place for some kind of, I don't know if franchising is the right word or model. I don't know if it paints the right concept, but some kind of threshold where, you know, org involvement can be real and officially recognized. Because I feel like one of the bigger issues from my perspective of being on the org side is like a Twitter team can buy an account with 3,000 followers, have like some really shitty graphic design branding, and throw money at a player and be on paper as legitimate as a Dignitas or an Elite or any of the actual legitimate players in the scene. So I feel like if there was some kind of governing body, if there was some kind of legitimacy put into it, where it was like, okay, you know, these X amount of spots are given out to orgs and they're, you know, I guess it's somewhat akin to a franchising model, you know, where it's like these spots are org spots and that's, you know, so they're competing under a name during FNCS and that's more officially recognized. Do you see that as a possibility, or would that be something that do you think would work?
No, because like I think at the end of the day, like what is actually the benefit of that? You know, obviously you say, you know, some Twitter team can sign a bunch of players and it seems less legitimate. Oh, they're playing for, you know, some random Nip. No, well, Nip is actually a good team. I was just trying to make a nipple joke. Right? You know, you see them playing for some like random team name that you've got up, but like again, that almost doesn't matter. The big in the Fortnite context, in the storyline context of the viewer's perspective, right? Putting like spots in for teams, like does that actually make the system better? Does that do anything? I am all ears for how to make the Fortnite space more sustainable, better for players, better for orgs and businesses, and better for Epic. But I am still yet to like just hear a good suggestion on how to make it work, right? Because most of the way it works is most suggestions end up being, okay, the orgs need to make money so they can pay the players better and make them go to media days. That's like that's usually like the main sale. If the orgs are here, they'll go to all the media days and they'll be fine. If that's like the height of where we're going with trying to get them inclusive, like I don't know, just maybe those players don't go to media days, it's fine, or you just pay them and then they go. So just something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that would benefit Fortnite. I think the open ecosystem, first, Epic loves the open ecosystem, and second, I love the open ecosystem too. If there's a way where orgs can be implemented where it makes sense, sure. But right now, like I just can't see some sort of model where it actually goes in and I care about it, right? Because like you know, you said, obviously Dignitas is doing massive stuff. They're trying to sign all the biggest players, all this stuff. But for me, when I look at it, I'm just like, how long is that going to last before they run out of money for this? Because they're just spending so much cash. I imagine. I don't know the specific salaries. There's no way they're making that back. So my thought process is more just like, well, this isn't sustainable. Sure, you're giving those players money. Awesome. That's great for them, but it doesn't make that much difference in the storyline of the year at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. You touched on ESL a little bit, or I guess we did. What are your thoughts? Just initial reactions to that. I was listening to Fantasia a little bit last night, so I was kind of hearing some thoughts there. But you know,
so it depends on what it is. I think you know, the ESL. I like that they're essentially trying to create like a separate model. I think that's really cool. You know, we had DreamHack for a while, and I liked last year where it was like you had a bit of a zero build circuit, right? You had 3 DreamHacks that essentially led into the same tournament as now as the Esports World Cup. Zero build's a little bit boring to watch, quite frankly, so it wasn't. It is. It wasn't like that great, but I like the idea that it was like there's a secondary path for players to do something. When it comes to the ESL model now, obviously don't know what the qualification system and whatnot is going to be like for the actual Esports World Cup itself. But I think there's just a big issue in terms of just game mode selection because Capture the Flag, right? Capture the Flag is a historic game mode throughout any game. You know, I'm a Halo player myself. I missed that. That was my probably one of my highest time investments ever. But you know, Capture the Flag is an absolute classic mode, but it's like there's yet to really be like a good Fortnite one. And from what I'm hearing and seeing from the pros, like this current map is not that great either.
My disappointment came. Sorry to cut you off, but I was really surprised that there was not any element of building included in it. Like that to me was the whole. Like that was actually a really interesting concept to me when I heard it on the surface. I'm going, oh. The classic shooter game modes, hardpoint, capture the flag, all that, and then you add the unique mechanic, you know, of building and editing. Like I was like, oh man, that'd be really interesting. Like even if you have like a very limited number of mats per life or whatever, like you could do some really cool and unique stuff with there, and the dynamics of it would be completely different than a Halo capture the flag or any of those things because you're just it just changes how you play the game in general. So I'm just like. Okay, so what you have is a third-person version of like a shittier third-person shooter of Halo or COD or whatever. Like that, I feel like they miss the entirety of the selling point. Like I totally agree. Like having something alternative to the battle royale that you can compete in is a really cool idea. But I just feel like they dropped the ball in every sense of the word in regards to that. Like because Zero Build BR is like its own. Like they're kind of developing for that. They have balancing for it. They have its own utility, whatever. So this was just like, wow. I feel like you just missed every opportunity here. Why would I play this instead of Halo? Instead of like, because Halo, I play Halo ranked. It's fun. Like capture the flag in Halo is really fun. I play the map. Not as fun as Halo. I'm sorry. Like
not even close, man. Not even close.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing where there are good modes in not in Halo. Well, there are good modes in Halo.
Yeah, there are
really good modes in Fortnite that currently work. Could easily be implemented into a 4v4 game mode like realistics, zone wars. You have systems that would be. Why is there not a zone war World Cup? That would be so sick to watch, right? I mean, it wouldn't be as fun as like a normal. Well, maybe it would be more fun than a battle royale, but it would be definitely more fun than 4v4 capture the flag. So I think like they have really missed the mark on the actual game modes themselves. Because I think one of the points that I can't remember who it was that was said it on our podcast, but it was essentially just like. Why would anyone play this mode if ESL was not hosting lots of money?
Right. Yeah, it was SVG.
It was exactly. No, they wouldn't. There's no chance. Like I still haven't jumped into it yet because I just am not that interested in playing it at all.
Right.
And all the people grinding it right now are grinding it because they know that if they get good at that map, they have a chance at making a lot of money, a lot of oil money. So it's all going well.
Like I love that you brought up Zone Wars because like and I've said this a couple times now, but like the BFC when that was doing really well, the like that was perfect to me. Like this was like, you know, you get the best fighters in the world, and it is just high octane, no breaks. There's no mid game deadness where nobody sees anyone for 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It is like it's a reductionist model. You are taking the most exciting elements and captivating elements for an audience and just doing that over and over and over again. You're isolating it and taking and that's not to discredit the BR, but I do think it's easier to watch, especially over like a longer period of time, because it's just higher octane. It's more like, and it's just it's more digestible, I think, for a lot of people, where it's just like, okay, I just want to see them fight. I just want to see like action, and that's all it is. It's just fulfilling of that. So I thought they had a great thing going there with that, and then they just didn't scale it, and then they just ran out of the sponsor money, and I was like, oh man, well, all right, that's gone now. Like, and now, you know, like, I mean, dude, that like token scene is still. There's still like decent viewership in that niche because people love watching that stuff. They love the stakes, and then they love the content community in it. Yeah, because it's just I mean, dude, those fighters in terms of fighting, a lot of them are way further ahead than the people you see competing in the BR. They are just like the most because they spend all their time on that. Like, yes, if they were to step into the BR, a lot of them will not be able to translate all of that because honestly, more of the BR is not fighting than it is fighting. You know, especially. But
I think the last one that people watched pretty intensely was probably Stable Ronaldo's recent one, I think.
Yeah, but it hasn't been scaled. I'm like, and that's where I'm saying like ESL had an opportunity, like you said, ESL had an opportunity to do that, where they could have done a realistics or even a Turtle Wars or a Zone Wars or something along those lines, where it's just the best fighters in the world fighting and you know, where it has distinction from the BR, where it doesn't feel like it's competing, and it's an alternative track for people of different talents to showcase that. Like I'm like, I love, obviously, you know, from an org perspective, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna send a roster and we're gonna try and compete and make the org prize money back, but like I just feel like it was a big missed opportunity there. So pivoting again, I want to hear like your thoughts. Okay, do you like the 3 majors and then LAN format?
Yes. So I think it depends on how it's split up. I think I love. Yeah. See, here's the thing. Like, this FNCS feels like it just kind of just appeared out of nowhere, like very, very quickly.
Yes.
You know, it just popped up, right? I feel like the seasons themselves need to be set up in a way so that it's like you have like a month break. Maybe that's how long it was, a bit more than a month or whatever it was. But you actually have time to like be excited about another FNCS. And, you know, there's usually like a good few weeks of cash cups and stuff like that before FNCS even starts, but it just felt like we were so quick back into this one. Generally, I really like the structure. I just think that we still need more in-person events. Like, one 100%. Global championship at the end of the year is amazing. Love it. However, missing like a solo LAN, it's something like the All-Stars, as I've kind of mentioned a lot. That's the perfect thing for a LAN.
The All-Stars would be the perfect thing, at least once every year. Because think about it this way: if globals is the effort to show teams off, it's to show duos off, to show orgs off. Why don't you give the chance to solo players who you run solo cups for? The only other cups that run from the duo cash cups and the duo events that are you know, specified throughout the year are the solo victory cups. Why not run a solo event that might not be the victory cup format, of course, but still like a solo all-stars? Because when solo all-stars happened, no one expected it to be as big, because people were still, this was right after season 6 chapter 2, which everybody hated. And so people were expecting it to be.
I still stand that's the worst season to this day.
Primal is the worst of all time.
Hate it. The Spire was the worst addition they could have ever added to the damn game.
I will forever shit on the upgrade mechanic. Adding more time and unnecessary RNG to a loot route pissed me the fuck off.
I think I've never watched arena games where dudes are in a POI for 6 minutes farming a car for mechanical parts to get a spaz.
Oh my gosh.
Anywho, my point is, if you're gonna make a solo game mode where you're doing a solo victory cup, or you're doing any solo events, like even like skin cups and stuff like that, where you're gonna do solo events, why not make an all-stars event every year to showcase the solo players that have actually been doing good? Maybe they're not as good in duos, but to showcase their talents, or to showcase in duos who might actually be the lead charge in those things.
The likelihood is too that your favorite pro got their start by placing solos. That was the journey
100%.
for so many. Like they would, because they couldn't find reliable teammates until they got results. It's a brutal cycle, like for a lot of players, where they could be really good and they don't place because they can't find good teammates. So then they don't have good results, so they can't find good teammates. So then it's and they just kind of get stuck in that. So it's like solos is a chance to prove yourself. That can be anything from solo scrims to winning a solo cash cup or whatever it was. But like that was the path for so many people. I mean, Tayson was a renowned solo player and started placing well. Like, I mean, you can go through the FN's history and
his first FNCS win was solos. Yeah, but what I loved this last year, and I honestly wish they'd do it again. The Red Bull contested solo land. That was such an amazingly run event for a third-party set.
The laggiest tournament anyone has ever played in their life.
The laggiest tournament, but 100% had great reviews.
I loved it, by the way. There's no way they made a profit on that, so I highly recommend we're doing it. It was so sick, right? One of the things I thought was the funniest thing ever. So the way that the stage was built was, it was like, I'll use my mic as an example, okay? So you saw it was like a ramp, it ramped up, and then we as the analysts were sitting back here. So when we weren't on, I could turn around and look at people's screens from this side. See, I got rubbish eyesight, right? I remember looking down at, I think it was Tripper's screen, maybe it was Cammy's screen, I can't remember who was like right below me, and I literally saw it was like a slideshow. It's like when you're watching it on like a live spec, that's one thing, but when I watched that on that person's screen, his POV, oh no, it was Rescard, it was Rescard, sorry, I totally forgot that. It was literally like,
oh jeez,
entire game, and I was like, oh no, this server performance has actually ruined what would have been an amazing party.
It seems like such an amazing idea, and of course they didn't make profit, so very unlikely to happen again. As a third-party tournament, it's so hard, 100%. Unreal. But it's also the fact that it actually drawed attention because people want to see at least one big solos event. Like I said, we're hosting solo cups, we're hosting duo cups. Yes, duo cups are great and stuff, but have you noticed the trend recently with the solo cups? This elimination kill record, the whole win format. People have such hyped reactions. People hated the whole win format. I'm actually not. I don't mind it. The solo victory win format.
It's genius from them because it's how you hook players. Like the idea that anyone can win a game and anyone can make money, and because truly, winning one game is RNG to some degree. Like, basically anyone, if they play their cards right and a couple stars align, basically anyone could win a game if you play it properly. And it doesn't take the best player in the lobby to do that, especially in a solo format. There's so much that plays into that. But it's like everyone, as soon as they get the taste of that $76 or whatever it is after tax. Oh, for a Fortnite kid, you're 14. That's a lot of money. But
I think it's so ironic because I'm pretty sure Reese made a video, the ultimate solo cash cup guide. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Here's the thing, though. It's definitely RNG because I haven't won. It's not a skill issue. It's just entirely RNG.
Yeah.
One day will go my way,
This game is already RNG enough, but making that win meta, it's RNG. But the thing is, the reason I like it a lot is not only for the fact like it's just a win format, so you have to play for the win, and you can't be this elimination heavy guy, which of course there's pros that do that, of course. But my thing is especially like the reactions. What the reactions come, the more, I don't know how to say it, the more like people, honestly, I noticed it when the Victory Cups first started, people grew so much from their first solo Victory Cash Cup wins.
Yeah.
Like, I remember a friend of mine, his name's Dylan. He had the craziest reaction, and he started screaming, and his parents started recording as soon as he started screaming, ran to his room, and he's just dying, screaming. He's red. Like, this is a pale dude who's turning red, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But people's genuine reaction, screaming, kids, because, again, this game is a lot more kid-friendly compared to other games. Sure. We have a 13-year-old like, a competitive gap. We have a 13-year-olds playing with 21-year-olds and stuff like that. Yeah. But with like Valorant and stuff, you have to be like 16, 18 to compete and stuff.
Yeah.
there's such younger ages and the genuine kids' reactions. You could see how much people care about the game, and the game grows from that. They want to see the reactions because people care enough to see them, even if you don't like the game as it is. When you see a kid react to how much he just won $76, like it's not even about the money at the moment. It's literally about the fact that the glory, the RNG is back.
I think like seeing those. The reality is like it's so good to get people into actually playing competitive, right? As you said, is a little bit of a trap because you can win a game, but you can also have like 1,000 pros or 199 pros in your lobby, and it's just not happening at all. But I think the overall idea of like having a win format is something that Fortnite needs because there's no winning moment in FNCS. Like they've attempted some things, but it's just like
that was part of why Invitational was so great. Like that was why like. I mean, oh man, that moment, I will forever have chills. I'm watching that in the venue with all those people.
I watched it the other
day. It was crazy, man. I get that was you couldn't have written a better ending. Truly.
Unless it was like first versus second at the end.
At the end, the 2v2 at the end. Yeah, sure. You're right. You're right. Vishal, you touched on something that I really want to get into. Obviously the age. The demographic that plays the game primarily, and who becomes a pro, and the behavior of that. So obviously, Fortnite's kind of infamous compared to other esports of like there isn't as much brand inclusion, company inclusion, whatever you want to say, just because. And I think a lot of that is due to they look at these pros, what they're tweeting, like you said, how they act, what they say, the stuff that they go viral for is negative more often than positive. Like, would you agree with that? Firstly, that's kind of the issue with Fortnite not being as scalable as an esport and as a competitive endeavor.
Yes, but I think there's a slightly hidden positive for other pros out there, which people don't often think about, because a lot of the pro player base is in their teens, right? Obviously, we're open to like 13, but the majority of players are like, there's rare to see someone in the grand finals who's 13 or 14, Obviously, there might be one or two in the lobby or something, but it's not like it's all covered out. They're mainly like 16 to 18 is the most common, but reality, our age gap here is 15 to 20. The most interesting part of that I find that pros can take advantage of is that they don't have like any form of discipline for the most part. If you speak to any pro player, there's a very select few of them who actually practice and like cognitively think about, okay, I'm going to put like a schedule up, like this is what I need to work on, this is what I need to improve. Like a lot of it is just playing tournaments and thinking about it. It's not like they're not trying to improve and get good, but there's such like a small select few who wake up every day and they're like, okay, I'm going to aim train because that's like the most important part of being a Fortnite pro is actually being able to hit my shots. Like still to this day, how many of them don't aim train blows my mind. If I was a professional player, I'd play it every single day. No matter if I have the best aim in the world, I'd still be doing that. VOD reviewing your games, some people do that, absolutely. But having like a routine, like there's genuinely like under 10 players I can think of who are in that category. And unsurprisingly, it's guys like Seti, Cam, some of like the best guys in the world who actually are much more cognitive about what they do. And
I think the EU guys are so much better at that. The EU guys and like right. the NA mentality is so like, oh well, I'm already here, like I'm already making my money. Like I have noticed that so much, and like I remember I go back to and I'll let you return to what you were saying. I just wanted to like but I think it was a Boop tweet a while ago that was like, it sparked a lot of controversy because he was talking about like how he kind of like, I think there's like a global salary or a universal salary in his country. So he was kind of like, he doesn't really have to worry about like his income as much. And he was like talking about EU versus NA. And, I feel like NA, we are so, especially in America specifically, like we are so central around money. Like how you make your money, how much you make, like all of that is like your identity for so many people. And I feel like even like for Fortnite pros, like they feel like they've peaked in life because they're making money and they're making a decent amount of it for a lot of them, like doing, playing video games for a living. And like I feel like that mentality, like they get complacent there because they feel like it's been achieved. And like whereas like with EU, I feel like the mentality is so much more along the lines of like, oh, I found my passion. Now I'm going to pursue it with everything that I can pursue it with. And I don't know if that's because the financial is not as much of a thing, or if it's just a cultural. Maybe they're interlinked. I do think the financial informs the cultural, especially here in the U.S. But yeah, the EU. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, I think like the U.S. It's funny, despite what a lot of Americans think, like the U.S. is still just one country. Obviously it's got a lot of states, there's a lot of diversity between it and wherever you go. But at the end of the day, the Americans still Americans. Like there's a lot more trends between that than say someone like myself from Scotland and someone from Germany or someone from France. It's like two totally different worlds. I know like Texas and New York might not be that similar, but it's obviously a lot closer. So I think like the shared mentality is pretty common. I honestly, I'm not saying this in a negative way to players, because if I was 16 and I had earned $100,000, you think I'm going to practice? Like, no, there's no way. I'm just going to think I'm the GOAT. Like, even if I'm 100th in the world, I'm going to be like, well, why would I put in more effort? I think the reality is that a lot of players get to like a really high position of skill by being like genetically good at it, by having like a lot of talent, putting in a lot of hours and playing the tournaments, and obviously having like a good amount of effort, but not like a crazy consistent amount of effort, a plan, a structure, all of these different things. And I think the EU guys are better, but it's only like the cream of the crop that are. I don't really think that's true all the way down. So the difference is EU anyway. I just think maybe there's a little bit of mentality, maybe it's just a little bit of like drive and competitiveness. I think that I don't speak to enough of the NA players to know, but I know a lot of the EU players, like the players, like the people that are the best in the EU are competitive. Sure, they want money, right? Like money is one thing, but they're driven by like trying to be the best. And that, for some people that drives them insane. I've not spoken to enough NA people to know if that's true or not. But I think like, once you hit like a level of success, a lot of people just kind of fall off because they just think, oh, I've made it. I'm happy now.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's tying back into the age part where you're in your teenage years. If you've made a huge amount of success, you're one of the best. You're maybe not the best, one of the best. You might just get complacent and think, you know what? I'm just going to stop now.
Well, 100%. I absolutely, like psychology is one of my like second loves. And I think that a lot of it goes into like, I wouldn't say you're not supposed necessarily, not supposed to, but I think it's very rare to have your delusions of grandeur from that age. Like you're supposed to be humbled during that time. I like when I was middle school, high school age, like those were some humbling experiences and some humbling years. And I think for most people, that's the general experience. So I think, when you have these delusions and you have these like, I'm the best at whatever, but then it's actually validated to some degree, or it's true to some degree, I think it like, because you don't have, I think the brain development and all the thought processes and all that stuff, the emotional regulation necessary to keep that in check at that age. So that's what I mean. Like the humiliation kind of drags you down until you're ready to kind of have that level of success or whatever it is, to where it balances out. But I think, when you're that young and you're seeing that levels, I mean, when you have hundreds of thousands of eyes on you, or when you have, like millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars at your disposal, and you just have all this stuff around you. I think that's where that phenomenon is coming from, of like,
definitely,
like there's like, I've already done better than most 16-year-olds in the world. I mean, I'm sure Fortnite pros, I think this was maybe it was another Boop tweet about like how many millionaires has Fortnite produced.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, dude, that
Crazy.
like when I actually started thinking about that, I was like, oh,
I think
wow.
we talked about
like
this on the last podcast. I think we did. I think we brought this up.
I definitely did. But I don't know. I find that really interesting. And I do think it contributes to a complacency. And I also think it affects, I think, competitive Fortnite on a broader scale of like, or brands and organizations see that and they're kind of like, okay, well, if they're not taking it seriously, we're not going to take them seriously. And I feel like there's missed opportunity there. And like, I'm a guy who, wants careers to exist in the Fortnite space. I want, it to be a mainstay where we can build an ecosystem of full-time careers around it. Because my thing about being full-time, obviously for me personally, I would love to be able to work in esports full-time and just love it because I am passionate about it. But I also think that, the more people that can be doing that and not splitting their time, the better all of it's going to be, the better the product as a whole and better the experience is going to be as a whole. And I think that's like, I want esports as a whole to grow. and that, so that's my goal with it. So I don't know, it's a rough balance, and I feel like one of the biggest issues is that there aren't a ton of people that are being mentors or pouring into that age range and those pros and all that, and maybe they're not super willing to listen because they're like, well, let's go band for band, bro. But I don't know.
Well,
it's
interesting you say that, not band for band, but there are some pros who are listeners, right? They
100%.
listen to everything. They hear everything. I think Tayson's one of the best examples of this, right? Where if you don't do it, but if you tweet at Tayson, he will see it because he wants to read it. He wants to listen. If he's ever in a Discord call, he's ever in in a room of people, he is listening. He is, and it's not. It's from like it makes me think about how his gameplay is, right? It's the exact same thing where he's continually just taking in information all of the time. And in that moment, it's like the same thing when you're playing a game. He's taking in, he's learning, he's listening. If you're talking to him about Fortnite, he will listen to it because he listens to what you're saying. He might call you stupid, but like he will be listening. He will continually listen.
Yeah.
There are people who are sponges like that. I can't remember what you said before that made me say that, but I'm sure it was something relevant to
No, my example would be Cooper. I got to work with Cooper a little bit. And dude, I mean, that kid, like, he's at, like, I think the thing that sets him apart so much is that he's receptive and that he's
100%.
I mean, he is like, and it was not just Fortnite stuff. Like, we would talk to him about things that he would say, or and I say this a lot. I attribute it a lot to his parents. His parents are super heavily involved. They are like trying to guide him on the right path. Yeah. And in esports in general, that is just, it's rare and it's such a blessing. And I think it changes the outcome of a career 100%. I mean, his big break moment
100%.
would not have played out the way that it did if it weren't for his parents pushing him the way that they did and refining his character and his demeanor and getting him a manager and all of that stuff that happened. But yeah, no, he's
before
go ahead.
I have a great Cooper story because this is not meant to be a humble brag, but it'll probably end up coming out that way. This is not the goal. It's to show how humble Cooper really is, right? When he won FNCS Global Championships, there was a press meeting afterwards where we could all go and sit and like ask questions and whatnot. And that was the first time I'd ever spoken to him and met him in person. The first thing he said to me, literally just walked off the stage after winning, he goes, "Oh, I love your videos." He didn't say like it was nothing to do with his own stuff. It was nothing to do with him. It was just immediately like nice to someone else. That moment, I was like, I love this guy, man. He's so awesome.
He's a great kid.
I was like, shut up, mate. You just won $500,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, amazing guy. Super nice.
No, he is very humble. We had a podcast. Was that when he got second?
Yeah, that was his first like major grands placement with Miro. Yeah,
that's when the name started becoming known, if that makes sense. But we had a podcast recording with him, and for his age, he is a very, very humbled, and he's not what you'd expect out of a general Fortnite kid at his age.
No, not
for
all.
sure.
Not
for sure.
He's so nice.
That was when I first noticed it. That podcast recording, because I didn't know much about it going into it. I just knew he got second. He's a great player. He played with Mero. But he really did answer our questions like he was a 21-year-old professional who had been doing interviews
100%.
for 3 years on straight.
Oh, dude, the only reason I asked him to do the podcast was because we did an interview with him for PL, and like, I mean,
I remember you telling me about this.
I think I've told this story maybe once or twice before, but we get in the Discord call. I'm like, we're just gonna run a little simple interview, debrief from FNCS and whatever. And here's the questions I'm going to give you and whatever. And he's like trying to set up his camera and it's all blurry. And he like half an hour of this goes by of him trying to like, we're trying to like walk him through how to fix his camera. And he's like, "Fuck this, I'm done." And like walks away. And I was like, oh shit, what am I getting into with this kid, man? He like recollects himself. He comes back a couple minutes later. It turns out it was just a focus dial. Literally, he just went, and it all went. And I was like, oh shit. And then the cameras turn on, and we start recording for the interview. And he's this like, I'm like, dude, I was blown away. I was like, are you media trained? Like, did somebody sit you down and tell you how to do this? Like, because it was this like night and day difference. And I just realized, I was like, wow, this is what he's capable of. Like he was speaking eloquently. He was answering questions unbelievably. I could not have asked for anything better if I had taught him myself. And I was like, wow, good on you. And like that, and it was after that I was like, yeah, dude, like I gotta have you on the podcast, like because I was like before obviously I'm getting the impression like there's no way I'm letting this kid like talk for 2 hours or whatever, but no, 100%. Like, and the more I got to know him, I got to meet him in Dallas, and like the more I got to know him, I love the kid. I'm a big advocate for him. I think more pros need to take his example, truly. Yeah, because he just is someone who I think will be successful because he listens, because he's a sponge, all that stuff. Vishal, unless you have anything, I'm kind of good to start going into last questions.
Covered most of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think our final 2 questions.
Yeah, so we have 2 traditional questions that we ask. Firstly is just kind of what can we expect to see from you? Are there any projects that you're excited about? If you want to plug anything like that.
Hey, it's all just making YouTube videos. Oh,
before that.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I know you're talking about plans and stuff, but I want to specifically dive in on this. It's not going to take long. Do you have any plans for globals currently?
Ooh, watching it from home.
Yeah,
that's my plan.
Really?
Damn.
Yes.
I wanted to meet Reisshub, man.
Really?
So here's the thing, right?
DJ has a big opinion on that, right? Didn't he have a whole rant about I don't want to go a place where they have to say no guns? Yeah.
It's talking about weapons and stuff. Yeah, like it was a little like tongue in cheek.
Sure.
His tweet was kind of just like, why does this have to be a thing? It's not like he would go there and his knees would be shaking and he's like, oh, someone might have a gun here, bro. Yeah, it was a little exaggerated.
It is a very interesting place, though, for sure. Especially the Fort Worth area.
Texas,
it's just a server,
Yeah. Well, and the RLCS is being hosted there too.
Yeah,
like last year it was. Yeah, so I guess Epic has some kind of relationship already established there and all that stuff.
Both run the Epic Games. They just want to run at the same time, make it easier for themselves, and also biggest audiences, right?
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, so for me personally, right, last year I've had conversation with Blast about this because obviously it's them running it, but did either you two go to Globals last year?
I didn't.
No.
Okay, so I Invitational might have been the same if you went there, but like it was genuinely like a prison. Like their security was insane.
Really?
Right? Like,
oh no.
It was mental in a good way. Like I never would have felt more safe in my life. But as a content creator who wanted to go and make content there, it was like off limits.
So that was So I did go to Invitational, and Invitational was like, it was pretty like nobody was allowed in the player lounge. No, like nobody could have content. I mean, Globals last year, I'm pretty sure they had like media slots that you could have out or whatever.
The media slots were something I did not take advantage of, which is a shame. I've said this a few times. I did not read they didn't explain it that well, and I also just didn't. I like interviewing. My whole goal was to like do a video on the winner and stuff like that. So like I wanted to go into the kind of like background areas to get beforehand, just to because I'm like I don't know who's gonna win, so I'm every player or something like that, So I didn't take advantage of that. So that was really good. Props to them for that. That was great. I didn't take advantage of it, which was a shame. But it was just like outside of that, there's nothing. Like literally, you have zero. You get a good seat, which was awesome. It's that close to the stage, which was really good. But yeah, there was essentially nothing outside of that. So for me, not being able to do it. Essentially being there, I made worse content. That's just the summary of it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I love the experience of actually watching the event. Like format could have made it much better and to be there in person. But for me, I'm like, as a content creator, when I went there, it was just I made worse content. Full stop. That was it. If I was at home, I could have been clipping things. I could have been like, making shorts and TikToks, and I could have been doing a whole bunch of different. Partying it, which I would have been doing as well, right? So a whole bunch of stuff. So
Invitational. You did the broadcast with Aussie, correct?
Yes.
So
would you? A bunch. That was about
the freedom, 100%. Do you think your experience at Invitational broadcasting was? Do you think if you were to do that again at this Globals, would you be excited for that, or would you be? Do you think it wouldn't compare up to the Invitationals broadcasting you did with Aussie? Let's say broadcasting on a third-party section.
Yeah. I mean, I've viewing partied last FCS, and I'm probably just going to do most grand finals by myself anyway, just because it's fun. But I like from a broadcasting experience, I don't essentially want to do anything that's really like professional anyway. And when I was on Aussies, it wasn't. We were just shooting the shit, and I was just like chilling out. And we weren't really casting. We're casting a bit, but like there was a bit back and forth here and there and whatnot. So I think like for me, it's more just the it's on like the live streaming part is just secondary, just to have something to do. I'm watching it, might as well live stream it. It's the content.
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's a big thing. But when it comes to like actually creating a YouTube video, like obviously had to travel afterwards. There was days missed where I couldn't like put content out at that time. So in terms of Texas this year, that's a further travel to make. Once that's over, like I'm locked down to making a video as soon as it's over. So I would have to like fly out there. If I wanted to like travel more around the US, I'd have to fly out there a bit beforehand, do the event, immediately get back, do the stuff. And if there's not any more like opportunities for content, then I probably won't.
Yeah.
I've spoken to Blast about that, and I think they're going to look into maybe changing, like getting like a content creator pass so you can like, have more access or something.
That'd be fantastic.
We were just like we're just jovially chatting, so who knows if that'll actually happen.
Yeah.
So if you do something like that, then that'll probably change my mind, and I'll probably go. But as things are right now, it's like, I don't know, do I rather fly like 10 hours to Texas to watch the event when I could just watch it at home and better content?
Yeah. Okay, so then the final question that we always ask is, if you were to give the audience listening one piece of advice, this could be content related, this could be whatever topic of your choosing, just one proverbial wisdom, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm just so wise as a human.
Wise words from the big dog.
pre Chinese warrior haircut. I wasn't looking so wise. So what I would say is, honestly, if you put your mind and time to something, you will get good at it and you will succeed. There's literally there's no other way. Like, sure, you can put your mind into some dumb things and your time into some dumb things. But if you actually genuinely go in with the thought process of trying to improve every day or every time you do something, you will get really, really good at it. And regardless of what that is, if you're really, really good at something, you can probably sell the ability to do that really well. And for me, every day I want to try to make my YouTube videos better and better. But there's other people who try to practice some of the most random stuff in the world, and they have massive success in that. Whether it's creating a business out of it or creating content side out of it. I think the Fortnite scene in particular, and when it comes to is lacking content for that wise, where people just are not continually trying to improve as time goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you ever want to just like get into anything, know it's going to be a long path, but it's worth it to continue to improve every single day.
I think a big element of that, maybe that I would add on, would be that the passion, I think, is what carries that. Like, I think like if you don't have passion for it, it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to continue that process of improvement. And I just seek passion, man. And then once you find that, that's when you start that, continue to grow in it. And I find that if you're really passionate about something, the more that you put into it, the more passionate you're going to become about it.
Absolutely.
And that just, then you become an unstoppable force. So yeah, great key to end it on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for yet another installment of the Ghost Comms podcast. This has been Reisshub. We'll have all of this stuff linked in the description below. If you watched all the way to the end here, thank you so much. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for any more episodes with your favorite creators, managers, owners, players, whatever we have on. And leave a comment who else you would want to see, anything you agree or disagree with, and we'll see y'all in the next one.
Every platform, by the way.